everybody. Welcome back to Earth and Star Spiritual Wellness Center. We have Roland back with us today, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
When I woke up this morning, I had like this song in my head, like, here comes Roland. Here he is. But now I can't remember it because it's been hours and hours and hours.
Hours ago.
That was like in my dream. I was like singing this and doing this dance to introduce you back into our show today.
Okay. I'm grateful.
Okay. Anything new going on with you? Do you have any upcoming events?
No, not at this time. No. It's a little slower through the summer, and we'll see when it come into the fall.
Okay, so I don't mean to put you on the spot here.
But you are.
I will. And last week, I had this inspiring idea of something, and then I picked up my phone to call you and tell you about it, and then like it just went away. So I didn't call you and tell you about it. But I feel like at some point, sometime soon, you and I need to create a workshop someplace, even if it's just halfway between where you and I live, like find a shop or a space somewhere halfway between where we live and just host a workshop for a while. You can do a energy cascade if you want to. I can do something I do if I want to, or we can do something together. I've gotten a lot of feedback from the iShine members or the attendees, and of all the surveys that everyone did, the one consistent thing that everyone is saying is, I wish I had more time with Roland.
Oh, okay.
Everybody was saying that. And they're right. You know, you went through the normal amount of rounds you would have gone through, but there was such a release that they wanted more. They wanted more of you, more processing, more releasing, whatever it is that they were wanting. That was the consistent thing. So now that we've said that in a recording in front of other people, we are pressured to make that happen.
Okay.
This year.
Yeah, we can. Why not give it a shot and it'll work.
Okay.
So,
and as the male energy in the room, I'm going to let you take initiative.
we can start looking around.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay. Sorry, I put you on the spot right first thing in the first 3 minutes.
Boom. There you go, right there.
You expect it from me though, right?
Yeah, I guess I do.
Honestly, like my stepmother, by the time she'd been with us for a year, she said that she didn't get embarrassed anymore because between me and my sister, anytime we went in public, we purposely did things that would force attention or like would embarrass a normal person. And so she's like, nothing embarrasses me anymore. I don't care what you do. Like, nothing embarrasses me. And I'm talking about like some real stuff. Like we went to Target one time and my sister put on underwear. Like she opened a pack of underwear and put them on over her jeans and walked through the entire store like that. And
okay.
You'd have a lot of fun hanging out with us, is all I'm saying, I think, in a public, non-spiritual space.
And even in the spiritual space.
Especially then.
Yeah.
So I had a dream last Saturday. And in the dream, it appeared to be a 3-story house. And in the dream, I was in the basement of this house. And it was a very small room. There were 2 beds. And the room was just barely big enough to house these beds. And I had the awareness as I was coming out of this dream that this was depression. Like a spirit of depression lived in that space. And I didn't like it because when I woke up, I felt that heaviness on me. So I went back into the dream, let myself kind of rise up through the house until I came out that 3rd level. But what it did was that dream triggered a lot of things inside that
Hmm.
I think we're trying to work through. Because even as healers, we kind of come back in this spiral, getting into deeper and deeper layers of things as we heal, because we never finish. Like we're never fully realized while we're human. And so there's always deeper layers. And so that brought me to this focus of shadow work and triggers today. How do we feel about shadow work?
Well, I will agree with you in the sense that even in doing this work or any kind of healing work, whether it be with medicines, an actual practicing medicine, or if we're spiritual, it's, we're still, like you said, we're still coming around. And, I'll get questions every once in a while. People ask me, or more so, they're surprised when I say I'm still doing my work,
Mm-hmm.
and we will continue to do. And uh, for them to look at me and be kind of surprised makes me surprised because, like, why wouldn't I be? Plus, in my own mind, I know I'm still working. And I've even had people reach out to me, and then when they hear me say that I'm still doing my work. I'm not doing anything right now, but like you in that dream, something gets triggered somewhere, and it may not be a lot, but something somewhere. And then I have to sit back and go, okay, let's not ignore that. You know, whereas you want to. And anyway, I've had people when I tell them that have said, "Well, I'm looking for someone to work with who doesn't have any of that anymore." And my answer to them is always like, "Well, great and good luck, but I'm still working on me." So
Yeah.
it's I agree with you completely. We are still, I think, and always will be, working on ourselves because something's going to come up, some little layer, something. And that's fine. Just makes us stronger the more we dive into it.
And I think that the trick to that is finding someone who's done enough of their work that they are at that deeper level of healing than you are, because then they have the capacity to hold that for you.
Hmm.
So it's not like you're finding someone fully realized, because that's Jesus, right? Like, we'll go talk to Jesus in your room. Don't come to another human if
Right.
if you expect them to be Jesus. Like, that's
Right.
just not realistic. But in this, I keep just seeing a spiral, because for me, I don't have a blank sheet of paper right now, but yes, I do. What am I saying? I always have a blank sheet of paper.
She always has a blank sheet of paper.
But for me, with where I'm at in the healing work I've done, I can have those moments of being able to observe negative emotion, and that something there is trying to process and come to the surface without feeling particularly triggered. And I feel like that is what we're trying to do as humans, because we're always going to have things to work on, but we don't want to feel triggered in the process, which is the shadow work, is, in my opinion, releasing the trigger. And so it's almost like once we can get to where we release the trigger, everything kind of goes in that spiral. Because with shadow work, it's realizing that everyone is one, everyone comes from creator. So we all
Hmm.
share a certain soul memory, and that we reflect each other, and that's mirroring. And that if we don't realize that we're in the center, then that means our perspective is probably somewhere out here. And therefore, we're projecting um, this way onto other people things that are inside of ourselves also. So it
Right.
gets kind of convoluted. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because shadow work can be very simple, but it can also get very convoluted, I think is the best word. Do you want to start simple?
Sure. Simple. Let's say like a simple kind of definition. For me, it's just. I'll be honest with you. Most time, I mean, this is a majority of the work I do, but I've never really called it shadow work. But it is literally just for me. Is going back. Shadow work is getting the person to going back into that they've either forgotten or don't want to touch again. And so in shadow for me, from hearing it years ago, it's like it's always there, you know never leaves you. Every time you turn around, it's there. It's kind of a thing. And it's one of those things that you think, okay, I've left it behind me, it's no big deal. But then you turn around sometime or another, and boom, there it is. So for me, it's like a simple definition. It's just that which we've ignored and or forgotten, or just think they've already fixed, but it's still lingering. And the work is to get to that, to interact with it, to feel it again, to be aware of it.
To what end?
I'm sorry?
To what end?
To such that there's no longer a reaction.
To release the trigger then.
To release the trigger too. And as I would tell people, it's just an energy. So that causes the reaction. So let's release the energy. But the memory, the experience, the knowledge is never gone. It's just no more energy to cause the reaction, or an energy that can be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you would explain it? Or what else? What would you add to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I've kind of, with my students, deepened this a little bit to where we begin to understand that everything that we're seeing around us, like even if you're not diving deeply into healing work and pulling up old memories or things that you've forgotten about, it's just realizing that everything that you see reflected in the people around you is part of you within the soul memory, within oneness. And that's the good things, perceived good things, and the perceived bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of identify those things that we recognize in other people. And then by identifying those things that we're recognizing in other people, we have then identified something that we like or dislike about something we're capable of, or some way that we are. And that reflection can help us have compassion for others. It can help us deeper understand ourselves and do our own work within ourselves. And I've kind of deepened that with them by, when we find these personality traits inside of ourselves, how do we balance those personality traits? Because they don't heal away. They're part of our ingrained energy, not like a wound or something like that you heal out, but just as part of our personality traits, because it can be part of our gift here on earth. Like, just for an instance, back before I started my healing path, there were a lot of behaviors that could be perceived as being a jealous person, especially in romantic relationships. But the more I self-healed and looked back on this, I realized that that's actually a personality trait that isn't jealousy. It's being territorial. Because what I create, what I put energy into, is mine. It's mine to protect. It's mine to oversee. It's mine to care for and nurture until it's ready to move out. And that's actually mothering, right? You grow something, you create something, you birth something, you watch over it, you nurture it, you protect it, you keep it safe until it's fully realized. and can go out healthy, right? So we went from like a negative thing to a empowered good thing that's
Mhm.
like an inherent nature. And it's realizing that in this particular practice, all of our shadows are like that,
Yeah.
and that they can all go both ways. So, for instance, if someone has a shadow of lack of boundaries, let's say, and they decide or they're guided to balance that with what they feel is the opposite of that, which is maybe creating boundaries or being more strict or something like that. Then they have this balance in their personality trait where when they find themselves having a lack of boundaries, they can change their mind and then create more on purpose, consciously, in awareness, bringing that shadow into the light. But then there's also times when maybe people are creating too many boundaries and it's restricting the people around them or restricting their relationships or not allowing a flow. So then they can bring that shadow back to this side where they're releasing some of those boundaries. So they kind of go back and forth in this beautiful balance of, and I don't know, that's just how I work with it or have worked with it in the past. How does that differ from how you're thinking about it?
What you're saying, it makes sense. It's like the realization of, you know, it's not just realization of the concern or the issue, but it's also realization once you dived into it. As you, if I understand what you're saying, it's just it takes the weakness and turns it into a strength. So, but to answer your question, it's, well, I'll tell you one of the things I say, try to say to most everybody is, and I'll say it in the energy cascades around, but the first part of this is the awareness that it's an issue.
Mhm.
The awareness that it has us strapped down, it has us feeling limited or whatever it may be. So for me, I tell people it's, if it's something, being more specific instead of just issuing boundaries, is if it's a just a fear from something. If we step into just feeling it or acknowledge that they still feel it, is like the first step for me, with working with people, because then I can get them and go, oh, that's there. In other words, acknowledging there's an issue, acknowledging that, like we speak of
Mm.
something people can use on their own, and as a practical manner, is to me is the first step, is going back and not ignoring something, but allowing themselves to go back and sit with it, see if they still feel it. So then I agree with you. If we go through the process, I don't believe until they acknowledge that it's there that we can actually flip it to something stronger. I do agree with what you were saying before, also of, we, if it affected your personality, changed you from who you could have been, maybe that's the way you should have been. It's just got to put it from a weakness to a strength, you know, and seeing why I got here, what it's done for me, but also understand this is not, like, maybe not that side of it. I like this side of it because this is grows, like you said, and it sends the energy back to the oneness, not projecting out. Oh yeah, going back to that, you mentioned about that projecting, and we can speak of triggers, but a lot of what we're projecting back, we're just getting back from others as well. So we're drawing more of that to us. So there's so many parts of this, but for me, it's just, if they're aware, let's get the awareness first, and then we can from there see how far they're willing to go or what they're willing to address, and yeah, go from there.
You said something in there that reminded me. I was in meditation And in my meditation, I had a memory of being in 7th grade, I think, in a new school, in a new class. I didn't know anybody, and I wasn't, you know, as cute as I am now. So, anyways, but like there was, I didn't have any friends at that time yet. And I had also recently, I think, moved to South Carolina. So there wasn't like a whole lot of people that I knew. I wasn't born and raised here. And I, in that meditation, I saw the person who was my best friend in that year. And I saw everything that happened after that, all the way through high school, and realized that she was a core player in my life. And I've never thought of this before because I never considered her as such. We stopped being friends a few years later. But it was this realization that if I hadn't have made friends with her, because her desk was right next to mine, but if I had made friends with other people instead, the trajectory of my existence through middle school, high school, and even college and young adulthood would have been completely different.
Hmm.
And that's something that you said, and I only just had that happen in my meditation this morning. And I sat there like dumbfounded that I never realized that, um, because she was actually like kind of a chaotic person. Her mom used to be a showgirl in Las Vegas, and she was at all of the shows until her mother kind of abandoned her and she came to live with her dad in South Carolina. And my high school years and all of that were very, very tumultuous. And I could see the trajectory change. Like when I hooked up with her, how I ended up with these set of friends and these set of friends and these people until all of these traumas and traumatic things happen. And I could clearly see how it would have gone the other way. And we would have been completely different. And in that moment, the only word that came was thank you. Thank you for being that key player. Thank you for changing the trajectory of my teenage years. And there wasn't even even though it sucked, or even though I hated it, or even though I was traumatized. It was just thank you. And I think that that's part of shadow work also.
I agree. It's hard to realize the benefits of the wounding,
Mhm.
even years after. But um, people speak of forgiveness and being grateful, for the situations, but we really can't dive into those until we're aware of and we release. But yeah, it's saying thank you. It's like the topping of it. It's like, okay, it's like accepting. All right, this is me and I'm strong. This is me and this is good. And looking back and going, yeah, thank you for breaking my heart. Thank you for bullying me, whatever. It's like it got me to this point, and now I'm growing in this way, or whatever it may be. But yeah, I agree. And sometimes when it is you're going back and you're thinking about the bully, you really don't want to thank them, because you're just like, I don't ever want to do that again. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't need anybody's kids to deal with that. But look at it, like you're saying, look at the difference, look where you're at. So yeah, I think I agree with you completely. Thank you is a big part of it.
And it's hard to see, and while you're in it, the thank you part. That's
Oh yeah.
something that is easier to see when you're out of it and do become more fully realized. So, bringing that into the awareness you were talking about, how, like, what is a trigger first off, and how do we bring that awareness to, how do we realize when something is holding us back in that space?
Okay. When it's like a pattern,
Mm,
when it's repeating, and that's what most people come to me. It's like, I'm tired of this always happening. Why does this keep happening? I feel stuck. I think most people already realize they're, in that pattern, but they may not think of it as a pattern. Inside they're like, I'm just stuck. I can't seem to move. But I tell you what, I just like my mind started taking off and I started going down a different way, thinking about a whole different thing to say. And then I was like, wait a minute, what did you just ask me?
well, what did your mind think of to say? Because usually that means something.
So, the patterns are always there. There are well, part of what I was got off my mind thinking was, you made the comment about your school, you know, being 7 years old and the pattern and trajectory you took. And my mind was still on that thought. And it was what I dealt with just 3.5 years ago. Something I was going through that actually kind of drug along for a while, but it was, just being able truly in the last handful of days kind of sit with it and go, oh, I can see why that was supposed to happen now. Literally, and it was a tough time for quite a while, but you look back at it and go, all the things, a lot had to do with my work and people working with me to help me heal and help me get on my way. But then there's all these things that happen along the way. It's like, oh yeah, as I heal, this shifted and this went this way. As I was addressing this went this way. But anyway, just in the last few days, it was literally going, oh, like you saying, seeing the picture of the high school, and like, oh, it was going this way the whole time. And it was me that was dragging it back in a sense of it's a little bit opposite what you're saying would, could have been. I was trying to fight the trajectory because of what I was holding inside of me. But when you just kind of realize, just kind of keep healing and let it flow and let it go in its direction, then it gets to a point and literally, and I'm repeating it, but it's like, oh, oh, okay. If that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have come up, this wouldn't come up, this wouldn't come up, which were all good things. But back then, at the time, I couldn't see them.
Mhm.
So that's where my mind went off to. It was like, oh yeah, my own experience. I mean, and it was just last couple of days I was sitting with it going, oh, okay, this is good. This is what it was supposed to be.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's where my mind went.
The difference in the two was the awareness, I think. Like, I went on a trajectory without knowing the trajectory was changing, because this particular person was the only one I felt at the time that was being kind to me, that was showing me attention, that was trying to show me around the school. So to me, it felt at the time like a good thing. And I didn't realize the negativity of the trajectory. It took me right where I needed to go, but I didn't realize it until today, right? But it was almost like for you, you were fully realized of what you thought you wanted or where you thought you were,
Right.
and your trajectory started changing, and that's why that fight was there, because you had an awareness of what you thought you wanted at the time. But even that's the same, while different, because at the time, I also thought that that's what I wanted.
Exactly. Exactly. And it goes back to the feeling in it,
Mhm.
and um, and then how it really goes, down the road. So it's, you know, now going back to the original question before we got to this, if I can even remember it, but it's still where are we at, and can we get back to or allow ourselves to get back to that which we don't want?
Mhm.
If for so you doing your work, that time period in high school that may have had some not so good events and feelings left behind that you didn't want, you address, you release, and you keep moving. But a lot of people that come to you or me, 20, 30, 40 years later, and they're still feeling it. They're still in the midst of it. And it's like it's a repeating pattern over and over. And what I see with most people is they are coming to me about what's happened in the last few years, and almost every one of them, I can carry it back much further. A lot of times it goes back to childhood, sometimes just a handful of years further back. It's like, no, this is actually where it is. This over here is just a trigger to remind you of this back here.
Mhm.
So, you mentioned triggers before too, and that's another thing that when we're coming at us, we don't like them at all, and I'm including it. I don't like it at all. But when you sit back and go, okay, all right, yeah, all right, I'm supposed to. Okay, all right, I got it. All right, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back here, or go back, or try to figure out where I'm supposed to go back. But it's the awareness, and do you want it?
And it feels like the awareness comes from having a negative emotion. Like
Right.
the trigger is negative emotion.
Mhm. The
So
trigger is just it's to trigger the negative emotion in you. It's kind of like putting a fire underneath you and underneath it going, hey, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here.
I like that analogy because like we feel pain in our physical bodies because that we have nerves. We're designed with nerves to know when something's physically damaging our bodies. It's not to hurt us, it's just to get us to find what's damaging our machine and fix the problem.
Yeah. Rest it, fix it, something. But yes, look here, pain, pay attention, kind of a thing.
My baby, my little 4-year-old, he stepped on a bee yesterday and stung the very bottom of his foot. And it's so horrible because I've been joking for a long time that I'm the wasp queen, because like wasps tend to kind of follow me around and they never sting me, but they like swarm and do weird things. And we have a bunch out by the pool. They come up, vultures and wasps, they come right up when we're out at the pool. And like a vulture, a huge one, comes and sits on this branch and just like watches me swim when I'm out there sometimes. I don't know, it's weird. But I went in yesterday and he stepped on this little honeybee and he didn't know that it was there. And the honeybee stung him. And of course, they die after they
Yeah.
sting. So, like, he's sitting there screaming and having a meltdown. And I had to pull the stinger I ran out there and pulled the stinger out of the bottom of his foot and comforted him. But then when he calmed down, we had to have a conversation. All right, now let's go find that bee that stung you. And it was still alive and struggling. Uh, and then he got to realize, oh, I get to have compassion for the bee too, because the bee didn't want to sting me because it would die. The bee stung me because it didn't know how else to make me stop stepping on him. So it was
Mm.
this whole full cycle moment in a second because then he wasn't crying because he was in pain. Then he was crying because I didn't mean to step on the bee. It wasn't nice. It did. He didn't want the bee to die. So I don't know why that story came up, but it just feels.
Well, I think I may understand why that came up because in shadow work, um, in my work, a majority of the people, I'll take them back to let that time in their life where they or them go back to that time in their life and they vent from that time, and it's so if it was a bully in your 10th grade year of high school or something, and that bully just bullied you on and on and on and on, sometimes that person just needed to vent, just like see them and feel it, fall deep into that frustration or whatever from that and just vent. But then there's occasionally I get those that they can't, that's not the way for them in the shadow work. They need to switch roles or switch aside and try to understand why. Now, I will say majority of the people I work with, they need to vent. They need to release before they can get to that side of it. Just kind of like your son crying, he's hurting, his bottom of his foot's hurting, he's having a reaction to it, and it's just he's venting like what he needs to do, but then shift to the other side. So, but occasionally when I work with some people, we almost have to see their side first before they're able to dive into their own pain, and they vent it a little differently. They'll vent it, but it's not necessarily a backlash of anger or a backlash of something. It's just like, I'm hurting and I don't want this anymore. And it's almost like they're got compassion to themselves. Like being, sometimes I'll try to take them in such that they're a big sister or a big brother to themselves, like have compassion for yourself. So I think your story is because we can go different ways in this type of work, or sometimes both.
And I feel like it needs both eventually, but it's hard to see the bee's point of view while we're in pain. And it's hard for the bee to see the giant who's crushing and killing him's point of view.
Right.
Also. So,
but what we can't do, we definitely cannot do, is try to only be the logical adult looking back on the situation. We need to have compassion for them, need to understand, but it's kind of like, how I want to say this. There's a difference between looking back at the situation. Let's say the event happened to when you're 4 years old, and but it's not to a bee, but to another bigger bully kid, and go back and in the middle of that feeling, then see them and try to see them from that side. Well, even though why you're hurt, it's like, why are they doing this? Sometimes I'll just try to get people to just ask why, like they're seeing them from way back then and at time being why. Whereas the adult now will go back, well, I understand why. I knew how his parents were. I knew how, da this or da that. Like that didn't help you or him or her. It's so we still have to go amongst our own heaviness, our own weight, to see it from that angle. Just as your son was seeing it while he was his foot was still hurting, but it was shifting in that time.
Mm-hmm. And
if that made sense.
When people hurt us, even, there's really almost no way to fully understand that until, if we're the need to know kind of people, we have to heal our feminine side first, which is the expression, the venting, the crying while it's happening kind of thing. And then we can kind of go back. But it's like, if we're the need to know kind of person looking back, it's hard to even understand how some people can do the things that they do, because we don't know their entire life. We're not them. We don't have that perspective, and we'll never have that perspective. But we're starting to see how we can recognize some of our own triggers and shadows through recognizing repeating patterns and the negative emotions, and changing our perspective or healing through. I have some hard questions coming up, so I'll let you talk before I ask them if there's anything you wanted to say.
Everything's still an energy.
Mm-hmm.
All this. So, the shadow work is allowing yourself, to be aware of this healing energy, to be aware of the hurt feelings, to surrender to them again, to allow yourself to go back to that. So, if we want to just sit on by ourselves on our own, it's just allow yourself to go back to it, be in it. Um, the tough part sometimes without if you're not working with somebody is to get out of this, just to stay focused into it. But it still can be done. But the first part of healing is awareness that it's still there and how much it still affects you. And so I tell people to sit and just be, and if you can do that, if you can sit and be with it, and it's kind of like getting a good idea of how much it actually hits you, how much it still sits there and stings you, sits there and still pokes at you, and then if you can, if you feel it, then start thinking about how many other times in your life you felt this again. So you talk about your trajectory from high school. It's like, it just kind of kept going one way, and like mine too, is how each one of those were similar energy coming back at you to re-trigger that, and all these times we're actually getting a chance to heal from it. But it's that awareness. I'm gonna keep saying that over and over. It's that awareness is going into it and going, oh, that was like that. That was like that. That was like that. Like, okay.
There's this word that came to me called shadow play. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like an old artistic form of puppets. And so what they would do is, in order to tell a story, they would take like a two-dimensional image or puppet of some sort behind a screen. So there's a screen and this two-dimensional image. But the way they would use light on the screen, the light would manipulate the image that you're seeing to make you think that you're seeing a 3D moving image. And this is how you tell stories through shadow play. And so the words that are coming to my brain, or the word that came to my brain, was shadow play. And I feel like that rolls into this right now because of our government right now, and over the past 50, 60 years. We don't just do shadow work in ourselves, we do shadow work collectively also. And one thing you said was, in realizing and finding the awareness in your shadows, it's recognizing the repeating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And we have repeating patterns of things happening in government or happening collectively. And the shadow play feels like that sometimes. It's almost like there's this illusion, this manipulation that something out there is 3D, is moving, when it's really just something unreal behind a screen. And our ability to recognize those repeating patterns and to do our shadow work around that could be the key to changing things collectively. And that's not a fully fleshed out thought. I literally just had this thought. So don't feel it like put on the spot about needing to reply or answer that. But the repeating patterns. And that's one thing that, when doing shadow work with clients, that's been the hardest thing for them to get behind. Because a lot of the time with shadow work, we're like, okay, well, what things trigger you? Or what personality traits or what actions that you notice other people doing trigger you? Because these are our mirrors, right? If we're coming back to that spiral, those are our mirrors trying to bring us back into unity of things that we as humans are all capable of. And that's usually the hard stop for some of my clients is, oh, I would never be capable of that, or there's no way they can think that that's the right thing because of their life experiences. And so I almost feel like the reflection from the personal to the collective, or the personal to world leaders, or the personal to the government, is where people get stuck a lot in shadow work. Do you have Is anything coming to you about that? I know that's a hard one. I said I have some hard ones.
Um, it's all tied together. By not doing the shadow work, we are. It's like, the energy is not just. I mean, the energy is within us, but it's also tied to everything because we're one with everything. So it's what I was getting was, as you were talking, it was like a big machine moving in a direction, and it moves in the direction that we as people project it to move. And not necessarily, I mean, literally, this image in my head is just like this rolling, slow machine that's going one way or the other. And a lot of the patterns, we project. A lot of the patterns that we get is because of what we're projecting and what's feeding back to us. And then it's coming from other people who have certain patterns, and what they're projecting is kind of just like this rolling thing that just kind of keeps going and going. So it feels like it's just kind of creeps one way. And the more we get into fear, the more we think we don't have any power, think we don't have any control, or think we don't have a way out of our own issues. It just speeds it up. It speeds it up. And then something will happen, something shifts, and then the trajectory changes a little bit, or things slow down. But we, for the most part, whatever part you play in this world of everything, is there's still enough fear that it's still, everything's just still moving. It's still going. I'm just kind of rambling a little bit now, but it's just like, it's like we have the power to slow it down and change things, or either put the movement going in a different direction, but not based off of fear.
Mhm.
But because what we're holding on to and looking outside of ourselves for either answers, or looking outside of ourselves to place blame, and we just keep speeding that up. So in other words, it's not looking within at our issues or our fears or our worries or whatever. We keep doing the same pattern, but we also at the same time are looking outside of it. So it's just, the government essentially is a collective of us anyway, that is either been given too much power, or let it be taken away, whatever. But it's just, once again, I'm just kind of rambling, but it's all a collective, and that's where the energy of the direction is moving. It's too much fear.
Exactly. That's what was coming up for me too, is that if we're looking at the collective whole as if it were still that projection, it's projected and then fully realized fear. Even if the people who voted for certain people don't necessarily super like that person, they voted for that person because they hold some sort of fear. Or they voted for a certain person who's doing loving things because they are in love. Right? So we can see the two different sides. And what's on top here is reflective of what the collective is holding. So if the collective is holding a lot of fear, then what ends up happening is the result of people who live in fear, of leaders who are in fear of neighboring countries, in fear of lack of jobs, in fear of scarcity, in fear of things, that they're doing extreme things out of fear. And any decision made in fear is going to be a failed decision, is going to be something that doesn't ultimately serve the good, because it's not made in love. So it's not going to be loving. It's a
Well,
decision.
and this doesn't, it doesn't matter what, what country we're speaking of, or what side of the government you support or don't support. The bottom line is, when we are holding that kind of energy, that's not true to ourselves. And some people will hear me say that and go, well, I do stuff true to me. It's like, some of us, yes, some of us, no. And those that don't, it's like we have to sit back and sense it. But when we are holding that energy, I want to say this, and we're trying to look at things, we're trying to, whether we're making decisions or we're looking to people to make decisions, it's not going to be the clearest, because we're looking through broken glasses, essentially. And I've tried to use that term before, that phrase before, because we just don't see clearly, whether it's smoked up glasses or broken glasses or whatever. Or even if you're on another extreme where you're trying to push another way and you're looking through rose-colored glasses, you're still not seeing completely clearly. So by diving into this kind of work, this shadow work, this, going back to that which is not your true self, I believe we can see clearly. We can make better decisions. I don't care who you are, where you're from, or anything. It's what's the phrase? I've said it several times. I always forget it. It's like going on the path. I'll think of it after a bit. But anyway, so drive me nuts. But we have this idea, we want to go down here, we're going to go this way, and I've got these good intentions. I said something about good intentions, it's like the road to hell or something, but it's
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
that's the one. Yeah. So we're going down here, but if something in here is still not settled, then somebody's going to come along and trigger you. And are you able to stay on this path, or does that pain pull you over here and then a little further and a little further? And then after a while, you're wondering, how in the heck did I get from way over here? I was supposed to be over there. That was my plan. Why did this end up over here? But it's, we're just not, we'll get to the point we just don't see clearly. And that happens too much. And I'm as guilty as anybody of it. But, when you throw a bunch of people together, once again, it's like that big machine that just keeps moving, but it's not seeing clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 1000% agree, because I feel like if you have a trigger, you're not in control. As soon as you have a trigger or that negative emotion, you've immediately lost your power immediately, because you can't see clearly. Your adrenaline goes up, everything, your vision narrows, your pupils might even dilate. It's like, or constrict, everything just goes.
Yeah.
And so you no longer have control over how you react or how you think or how you see what's happening. But when you can release that trigger, everything expands. And even if you do have to place a boundary, even if you do have to address the thing that's happening, you can do it from a space of clear vision, freedom to do what needs to be done versus the need to react to what they've done. It completely changes things. And when we think of even the stuff collectively that when we want to do shadow work collectively, we can also go back to remembering what you were talking about with pain. Pain is for change. So maybe some of this is the pain that's trying to show us
Yeah.
what we need to change because it's destroying our body. This is what needs to change.
The shadow work is, it's for us, but it's not only for us. It is the collective. It is everything. It is the oneness. It is two people that come together that normally would come together and every time have had the choice words with each other. And let's say it's happened many times. Well, before they even come across each other and they know they're going to come across each other, claws already come out and they're already in that state of mind. They're already there. But when we get one individual to stop ignoring the triggers and actually sit with the triggers, and that's what I tell people, do not ignore the triggers. Everybody wants to ignore the triggers, including me. We want to, but we shouldn't. It's like, no, they're there to help. They're there for a reason. So and then go into that work and sit with it and allow it. It's like, why does this person make me feel this way? What is it? What's in it in me? And does it have anything to do with this person, or is it from something else? Same thing with them. But anyway, the point is, when this one individual, when we allow ourselves to go deep into it and do the releasing and sit with it and release and sit with it, the next time, and it's truly gone, such that the feelings are no longer there. The memory will always be there, but once it's truly gone, the next time we come together, this person will have the claws out, and this person that did the work can stand there and listen to them. And then you'll watch this person kind of not melt away, but just kind of settle down, like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not even saying words. Sometimes just seeing each other, and the other one's it's not the expressions or anything. So in other words, it takes like two to fight. But if one has done the work, then the other one will end up walking away from the situation going, what just happened? And then it actually will spin that person some to go, seriously, what was that? What happened here? But as long as we're still holding those energies, we're just like going at each other. And so if you take it on the big scale of the things in the country and stuff, it's just that over and over and over and over. So, but yeah, what you were saying is sometimes like all of us, we are sent down this road because we got to learn something. And I have people ask me, it's like, what am I supposed to learn? I said, everything you just went on that journey, all parts of it. But then we can see, get to a point where, and that's the thing with when you really feel stuck and you can't deal with it anymore, and stop dealing with it and go back to it and take those glasses off and look at yourself, look at what you're carrying. And then the energy, shifts. Instead of attracting a bunch of more of the same, you start attracting, or actually projecting, and actually, putting back to the collective, putting back to everything, to the oneness, and help with the healing of others, open up the others' minds, or even sending more triggers out to others for their benefit, but nothing out of negative. It's like reminders.
I like the last thing you said, because I think that was very pivotal in my own growth, was that when I first started doing shadow work, like in the beginning of the healing journey, it was introspective, look at me, look at me, look at me. And so anytime other people did something or projected onto me, I took it and kept saying, okay, how is this my fault? How did I do this? How is this me? But I did eventually come to a point where I stopped doing that. I didn't stop completely doing that. I still do that. I still look at myself in every single situation. But my husband said something one time. So like we had this altercation with the neighbor one time at our family cabin, because we thought the trash can across the street from us was ours. So we put trash in it. And then they came out and threw the trash in our ditch and then started like weirdly confronting us from their yard without coming out and actually having a conversation. Like they would yell from their yard and then go in and slam the door. And my husband started to like go up there. And I was like, stop, what are you doing? Don't go up there. And he's like, he looked at me and he said, sometimes people need to be confronted with their behavior in order to change it. And I was like, okay, well, that's a big thing, light bulbs, but let's not do that now, so I got him out of that situation. But that was a big change for me too, because you said sometimes sending out other triggers that trigger change in other people. And it really struck me after talking to some different neighbors that those people have been bullying the entire street for 2 decades. They just, that's how they are. They're just nasty people. And I imagine it would just take one person knocking on their door and saying, hey, it was an accident. I didn't mean to. But if you want to have a conversation, let's have it, for them to think twice about that next time they do it. So I think that was a bit of a shifting point, as well as knowing when to place those boundaries and say, you don't get to talk to me like that, but we can have a conversation and you can tell me what's upsetting you about this right now. I think that's good shadow work as well.
It is. As I was saying earlier on, I've never really called it shadow work, but it is exactly what it is. If you were to look it up, as far as what I do, but excuse me, it's not necessarily easy work. Simply because most of us don't want to go back to it. We just, we don't. And we like to deal with what's in front of us, but truly going in shadow work is going back into it, going deep into it, and going to the core of it. But it's not always easy work, but it sure feels good afterwards. And I also will say, doing the shadow work, it's kind of like once you're ready and you open those doors, some say you can't close it as well. No, you've expanded, you've grown after the first release you've done. More comes at you because you're strong enough now to handle the next layer and the next layer. So more keeps coming. But yeah, if a person just can, in their own practicality, if they can sit with it, and if we can get out of this, like let's say if you're the angry person, you're the angry person on the street, and if you can get out of this where you're looking at they did this or they did this or they did this, and stop and sit and feel. And most people can sit and feel, but then we got to sit and feel with stuff in the past and keep going further and keep going further and keep going further of it. So, and it can be difficult. It can be very difficult. But I guess what I'm getting at is when your listeners are sitting there and going, all right, what can I do? It's just like, just go back. I've had conversations with people when they reach out to me and like, I don't even know what I need, but I've been directed to you and I feel like I need to work with you. And I'll say, well, let's do a conversation. Let's just do a consultation call and let's see if I'm the right fit for you. And I've gotten so many will come back after that and go, just by you telling me to go back to this, I felt lighter because I'm sitting with this. I was forced to go back to this. So in the practical sense, if we just do that, don't put blame on anything, but sit and feel and be aware of it. And then we got a direction to go into. And you will notice just how you may sleep better that night or anything just by being aware, not even releasing it, just being aware. It's like, oh, and seeing. And if more of us could sit with that, the greater their awareness, just as a collective, the awareness grows. And right now, the awareness is still growing. And I think there's just even more anger and stuff out there, or more fear popping up because the awareness is growing. It's kind of like, I don't want to touch into that. I don't want to get into that. But I think that's, what we have to do at this time is to sit with it.
Thank you. So, when we're talking in a practical sense of how to deal with fear or create peace, looking at the fear, looking at the anger, looking at the repeating patterns, and just allowing it to come up, allowing ourselves to look at it is what it sounds like
Hmm.
your suggestion was.
It's perfectly fine to get angry and be afraid, but we just have to stop and look at it. Where are we at now? Of course, there's a lot of things in everyday life. You can be like, one is you're just exhausted. You've worked a lot or had a lot of stuff going on, or da 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 da, or let's say you had a young kid that was sick all night long or whatever. Those you kind of got to push aside. If you actually kind of sit with it, and it's like, why did I react that way? Why did I say that, or why did I run from the situation? What was what was it? What is there? Why did I freeze?
Mm.
Or why did I freeze before I even got to the situation? And it's just kind of sit with it. But yeah, we need to realize that it's there.
Thank you, Roland. Well, I think we've reached our time. We have. Is there anything else you want anybody to know, or you feel like we talked it out?
I think we talked it out. We went around and around. I know I have a tendency to go around and around with certain points, but I guess some things I'm somewhat firm on. I believe strongly in. It's like we really like diving into. And if you need help, call me, call Mary, call somebody. Somebody's here to help. But in the meantime, sit with it. Do you still feel it? If you still feel it, then it's not gone, and it's still there poking at you, reminding you every day.
Hmm. And that can be many different layers. And just wanting to show the
Yeah.
cards that I pulled today that kind of reflect our conversation. I feel like this is the card when we're sitting in that fear or in that repeating cycle, needing to do the shadow work. And I feel like this is very reflective of the shadow work process. There's all those prickly spines and it hurts. The pain is there pushing us towards change. But the thing about the cactus, you can see that there's yellow light, meaning there's something coming up. And the cactus has this constant well of water inside of it. The shadow work doesn't kill it, it's making it replenished from the inside out. And then that leads us into our joy space, our inspiration space, our becoming space, just being that bright yellow light. And then I had this card, not in that trilogy, but then just kind of off to the side. And the stranger card kind of comes to us from different perspectives, like what we talked about earlier. When there's a stranger, when confronted with something we don't know or someone who's different from us, do we have the perspective of fear or do we have the perspective of curiosity and wanting to learn and integrate and become one with? Because those perspectives can help us deeply and greatly in the collective and in our personal shadow work. So that's what Spirit had to say and summed up our video in 2 minutes.
Okay. They're always much faster. Get to the point. Try to get to the point, people.
The guides get it done, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get it done. But no, it's diving deep like that and allowing and releasing is very, it's I don't know, it's just it can change your life.
Mm-hmm.
It
Absolutely.
really, can change your life. It'll change how not only you see yourself, you see others. It can really change.
Thank you so much for coming today, Roland. We've had a great time, and I didn't
Thank you,
hear your
Mary.
squeak at all.
Then what?
I didn't hear your chair squeak.
Chair squeak at all? Good. I was
He
trying to be really chill.
He's like, hear my chair squeak.
Yeah.
Didn't hear it at all. all. But
Good.
thank you so much for coming. It's always a great time having you here. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.